So picture this. It's the 1930s, and one of the most powerful, most technologically advanced military forces in history is being born, in total secret. This force would come to dominate the skies over Europe, becoming a symbol of a terrifying new kind of warfare. And yet, in less than a decade, it was completely, utterly destroyed. This is the incredible story of the Luftwaffe, its secret rise and its spectacular fall.
So, the Luftwaffe. You've heard the name, right? In German, it literally just means air arm or air weapon. Pretty straightforward. But by 1939, that name, well, it meant something else entirely. It became shorthand for the most technologically advanced, battle-hardened air force on the entire planet. It was the tip of the spear for the German Wehrmacht and its whole new lightning war strategy.
Okay, but here's the crazy part. After World War I, the Treaty of Versailles was crystal clear. Germany was forbidden, totally banned, from having an air force, at all. So the big question is, how on earth did they go from literally zero planes in the 1920s to the world's most feared aerial weapon just a few years later? And how did they do it in total secret, right under everyone's noses?
Well, its rise is just this incredible story of defiance, secret deals, and some really meticulous planning. This was no accident. It was a carefully orchestrated plan to break international law, all hidden in plain sight.
Believe it or not, this secret rebirth started almost right away. Germany's Air Force was officially gone in 1920, sure, but the ambition, that never went away. And get this, by 1924, in a wild twist of history, Germany cut a secret deal with the Soviet Union to set up a flight school deep inside Russia. We're talking hundreds of future Luftwaffe pilots learning their craft on combat planes completely out of sight. Then, when Hitler came to power in 1933, the whole thing just kicked into high gear. They created the Reich Aviation Ministry, and by 1935, they were done pretending. They unveiled their brand new and very illegal Air Force to a completely stunned world.
Okay, so having planes and pilots is one thing, but an Air Force on paper isn't worth much, right? You need real-world experience. And for that, Germany found the perfect and incredibly brutal testing ground, the Spanish Civil War.
They sent over a group called the Condor Legion to support Franco's side. And really, Spain became their live-fire laboratory. This is where they tested out game-changing new aircraft like the Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighter and that infamous dive bomber, the Ju-87 Stuka. More importantly, this was where they perfected their tactics, especially close air support. You know, the idea of using planes as flying artillery to just hammer enemy positions right in front of your own advancing troops. And yes, the horrific bombing of Guernica. From a purely military standpoint, German planners saw it as a brutal but successful proof of concept. So by 1939, when the main event kicks off, the Luftwaffe is the most battle-tested air force in the world, no question.
So, at its peak, the Luftwaffe seemed totally invincible. But here's the thing, baked right into its DNA were the seeds of its own destruction. There were these critical, strategic mistakes and a huge shift in leadership that would basically seal its fate.
See, in the early days, there was this guy, General Walther Wever. He was the Luftwaffe's first chief of staff, and he had a really smart, balanced vision for what air power could be. He got that supporting the army was important, of course, but his fifth point, that was the game changer. Paralyze the enemy by destroying their factories, their ability to make war. And to do that, you need big, long-range, heavy bombers.
But then, in 1936, Wever was killed in a plane crash. And this was a massive turning point, a total catastrophe for the Luftwaffe's future, really. After he was gone, his big project, the Ural bomber, this plan for a fleet of 4-engine strategic bombers, it got scrapped, just like that. And the guys who took over, they had a very, very different vision. And a much more short-sighted one, as it turns out.
And this is where we see that fatal split in strategy, the one that would really define the entire air war. The Luftwaffe went all in on tactical support. They focused on medium bombers like the Heinkel 111 and dive bombers like the Stuka, planes that are perfect for helping the army win quick battles. Meanwhile, the Allies, especially the British and the Americans, they went the complete opposite direction. They poured their resources into huge 4-engine heavy bombers, like the B-17 Flying Fortress and the Lancaster, built for one reason, to fly deep into Germany and smash its industries. And this is key, they also built long-range fighters to protect those bombers all the way there and back.
And honestly, this quote from the head of the Luftwaffe, Hermann Göring, it just says it all. Hitler won't ask me how big our bombers are, but how many we have. They became obsessed with numbers over actual strategic punch. The thinking was, why build one expensive heavy bomber when we can build two cheaper medium ones? And that mindset created an air force that was, well, a mile wide and an inch deep. It looked amazing in short, sharp campaigns, but it was completely unprepared for a long, drawn-out war.
And for a while, this all seemed to work brilliantly. The early victories in Poland and France, they hid these deep, fundamental flaws. But when that short, decisive war they'd planned for turned into a long, global grinding war of attrition, that's when all the Luftwaffe's problems were just brutally exposed.
At its heart, the Luftwaffe was a blitzkrieg weapon. Think of it like a surgeon's scalpel, designed for quick, precise strikes. It was never, ever built to be a sledgehammer and a long defensive slugfest against industrial giants like the British Empire, the Soviet Union, and the United States.
And you can see the industrial reality right here. It was just stark. As early as 1940, during the Battle of Britain, the cracks were already starting to show. Germany was being outproduced in the one thing that mattered most: fighter planes. You can see Britain was making way more than it needed, while German industry couldn't even build enough to replace its losses.
Now this number might surprise you. 36,000. That's how many combat aircraft Germany churned out in 1944 alone. Under Albert Speer, their production absolutely surged late in the war. But it was a totally hollow victory.
And why was it hollow? Because by 1944, thousands of brand new, advanced planes meant absolutely nothing. The Luftwaffe was missing the two things you cannot run an air force without: trained pilots and fuel. It's that simple. Allied bombing had crippled their fuel production, and years of brutal combat had wiped out their experienced pilots. The new guys coming in, they were being rushed through training with just a tiny fraction of the flight hours their Allied opponents had.
From there, the end came incredibly fast. The defense of the Reich campaign, trying to stop the Allied bomber streams, was just a meat grinder that chewed up what was left of the fighter force. Sure, they had these amazing new jets like the Me-262, but they were the definition of too little, too late, and they were full of technical problems. The final nail in the coffin, though, was Operation Bodenplatte, New Year's Day, 1945. It was this massive, desperate, last-ditch attack on Allied airfields. It failed spectacularly and cost them hundreds of their last good pilots. After that, the Luftwaffe was basically finished as an effective fighting force.
And we can't end this story without talking about the Luftwaffe's dark legacy, because it goes beyond just the military history. To test their aviation equipment, things like survival gear and ejection seats, horrific, fatal medical experiments were conducted on concentration camp prisoners. This directly ties the Luftwaffe to some of the absolute worst crimes of the Nazi regime.
So it all comes down to this one big question. Was the Luftwaffe a truly revolutionary weapon that was just defeated by overwhelming numbers and terrible leadership? Or was it a house of cards from the very beginning, a brilliant tactical tool built on a completely flawed strategy, one that was always destined to collapse the second it got into a real, long fight? It's something people still debate today.